This is Molly. She's a happy, normal dog. She doesn't do fancy tricks, and she's not just a social media trend. But Molly is pretty well known around her hometown as ambassador for the SPCA of Ocala, Florida. Molly makes her friends the old-fashioned way, one wet dog kiss at a time. She meets and greets people at various social events and happenings, always with a wag in her tail and a special dog smile for the kids. Molly's life is happy and safe. Her inspiring journey to this point, however, follows a darker path.
Kill that dog!
911, what is the address of the emergency?
Yeah, hi. There's a neighbor of mine. He broke a window to his house. I guess his girlfriend locked him out. Now he's beating the piss out of a dog to the point that the dog is going to die.
Okay. What's your neighbor's name?
No, listen, quiet. Call the cops. I'm calling the cops.
Okay, so where's he at right now?
He's in his house beating the piss out of his dog.
Dispatch Center began receiving several phone calls from neighbors reporting what they believed to be a domestic violence dispute. The neighbors had all gathered outside. They were obviously upset, and they had gathered up Molly. They absolutely saved her life. Absolutely. I think he would have continued beating her until he killed her. He had stabbed her 3 times in the top of the head. One of the stab wounds had actually pierced her left nasal cavity. She was in bad shape.
People describe the attack as sickening, and tonight they want the maximum punishment for the man accused of stabbing and then beating his dog.
Yeah, this whole scene erupted at an Ocala neighborhood Sunday afternoon.
This is Molly, a Labrador boxer mix. Neighbors heard the ferocious attack that nearly killed the dog. She ran out just as neighbors ran up to the house.
There were quite a few neighbors over here. It was kind of like almost like a lynch mob. It was very, very, very threatening for him.
We don't ever want them to get to the point where they put themselves in danger, and I think these people did the right thing. They were yelling to him, you know, let the dog go, you know, cut it out or whatever, but they didn't go up and engage him in the house per se.
Is no stranger to jail. He's been arrested 5 times and convicted of possession of a firearm in violation of a domestic violence injunction.
I was an investigator here at the time, and my fellow investigator investigated that particular case, so I was familiar with what was going on. And it was just a very sad situation, but unfortunately, all too common in some places at the same time. It's something that a lot of people don't correlate together, the way that some people use an animal as a way to get to somebody. And that's what happened with Molly as well, is that was an additional way to torment the other survivor in that situation.
Molly was a foster dog that I met through the VFW. I'm a disabled veteran with PTSD, and I had a boyfriend, and the dog would get in the way to protect me, and he'd push her away and also say that you love Molly more than you do me. He said he wanted to kill me, and I'd already heard that before, so they had taken me to the centers thinking that I'd be safe. And when I was at the center for the first night, when we were eating dinner, I saw it on the news and about passed out, and that was when Fox News had the whole history of the boyfriend's criminal record all the way to when he was a teenager, that he had several felonies. But I just was in shock with the dog and the bloody everything. I just I'll never forget that, and I will always need counseling for me.
We had a horrific night one night when a beautiful white boxer mixed dog was brought in, and we treated it the best we could with a really loving staff who took really good care of her. And it took months, 4 or 5 months of rehab. Molly was better and ready to be adopted. by someone that would take really good care of her. That person happened to be Lily Barron. After a very careful search of going through applications for people who wanted Molly, we had settled on her because she had such a great facility in order to take care of her.
Months before, on that spring day in 2014, a concerned community had saved Molly from savage hands. Now Molly is about to be ushered into another chapter of her story.
When I first got Molly, Molly was very broken. It was so sad to see a dog so emotionally broken. It really tore me out. Thank God that I had the intuition to give Molly the space and the time she needed to recover from what she was going through emotionally. Sometimes it's okay to be lost. And for a while there, Molly was lost. But we got her back.
It was just so nice to see her alive and thriving for me. That made a big difference, and a closing to a lot of the hurt of not being able to see her and knowing that she's doing well.
Molly's a survivor. What about the ones that didn't survive? That's the sad part. And if we don't do something about this now, what about the ones that won't survive in the future?
In 2015, I had a woman come into the office at the Animal Center and asked to speak with me, and her name was Linda Littlewolf. She was quite an author and storyteller, and quite a character. She came to me with this idea of starting an animal abuser registry. We formed a blue ribbon committee with the Sheriff's Department, our own legal department, the Ocala Police Department. We met for several months and hashed out different ideas of where we could go with this. And one of the biggest problems we had was who was going to be in charge of this, and nobody really wanted to be in charge. So Marion County Animal Services became the owner of this.
I was actually tasked by the previous director on doing research, researching this item, animal abuser registry, so that's what I dived into. And several boxes later and a couple months of late nights and just really looking at how are people applying it in different places and what is it that our community wants. We wanted a enforcement aspect. We wanted TIF to be able to ensure that it wasn't just letting people know this person's an abuser, that this person violates these rules, there's consequences. So yes, they got to register every year. They're not allowed to own or live with anybody who has animals at the time. It's common sense.
So many people had a hand in it, trying to get this off the ground and working, and it is.
County commissioners heard a constituency ignited. Support for the Animal Abuser Registry proposal was undeniable.
Today, Americans hold the humane treatment of animals as a personal value. It's reflected in all of our cultural practices. Not only do 165 million animals share our homes, but they are regarded as members of the family. In fact, a nationwide study revealed that 96% of Americans believe we have a moral duty and obligation to protect animals, and we should have strong laws to do so. There is currently no means of ensuring that animals are not placed into the hands of convicted animal abusers. Animal abuse is both a predictor and an indicator of other forms of violence, such as domestic violence, spousal abuse, child abuse, abuse of the elderly, more violent crimes in the community, and the sexual crime of rape. 63% of aggressive inmates had deliberately hurt animals as a child. 70% of animal abusers also have other criminal records. 88% of families investigated for physical child abuse had abused and neglected animals. It has been documented by prosecuting attorneys that 80% of the perpetrators of animal cruelty will reoffend within 1 year. Other statistics show that in some classes of animal abuse, such as hoarding, there is nearly a 100% recidivism rate. Molly's Law would be an absolutely essential tool to inform law enforcement, animal control and services, pounds, shelters, humane societies, pet stores, pet breeders, and the public that offenders are not fit to buy or adopt any animal. We must embrace positive change because a society is judged by the way it treats those who are most vulnerable. And the creation of Molly's Law will send a strong message to do the right thing to protect animals and humans alike.
So Molly's Law in particular was very important to me because I was just so touched by Molly and her story. While we were going through the process, you know, we had many people come to the podium to speak regarding the reasons why we needed an animal abuser registry. And, you know, they're all so very passionate about their animals and about making sure that this happened. There was a lot of very happy, some emotional, jubilant people when that animal abuser registry passed. It really was a great day.
I want to give kudos to all 5 of our county commissioners who have taken a strong stance against animal abuse in our county. And their focus this month is on the Animal Abuser Registry. Molly is an American boxer Labrador mix who was brutally beaten and stabbed by an individual. Molly survived and became the ambassador of Molly's Law.
Molly really became an ambassador for this law, this new ordinance, because of what she had been through. And Lily took hold of that whole idea, you know, a year after she adopted Molly and ran with it. She took that dog to parades and flea markets and commission meetings, and she had Molly everywhere. Talk about being an ambassador for something. Because that wasn't part of the deal when she adopted her in 2014. We went everywhere with that dog, but Molly and Lily were just a fabulous team. We really couldn't have picked anybody better to adopt her because she really ran with the whole idea. And still does. Everybody in town knows Molly. Now she's got a billboard. So it couldn't have worked out better because she was the person that Molly was destined to be with.
Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We're here, Lily, because of Molly. Tell us a little background on Molly. We don't want to get into the whole story, but tell us a little background on Molly and why she's so special.
Molly was a dog here in Marion County that got stabbed in the head 3 times and beat by her owner, who ended up being a very high-profile case here in Marion County, where the residents got together and went before the Board of County Commissioners, and they have decided they wanted an animal abuser registry. And fortunately, the community came together, the commissioners came together, and we got it done.
So this was a community project then from the very beginning.
Absolutely.
It wasn't just you dealing with Molly. It was a community effort to get this up to the county commissioners, and then it was an effort by the county commissioners to then follow through with this registry.
They all agreed on it. There was no backlash with this. They heard the residents. Animal abuse leads to human abuse, and one thing led to another, and we did it. We got it done.
This registry is the pet equivalent of the sexual registry, where sexual predators get put on a list. It's so that they can't adopt another animal and abuse it again. Am I understanding that correctly?
You're absolutely correct. So that, you know, some of the stipulations in this ordinance, it requires people not to own animals, work with them, anything of that nature. So it's protecting our pets.
But the sexual registry is nationwide, statewide and nationwide. Our animal abuse registry is Marion County.
Yes, that's the problem right now, is that you can drive over the county line and the Animal Abuser Registry is not in effect. So our goal is to get it passed statewide and bring this to the attention of the nation and start a nationwide Animal Abuser Registry. This needs to be a national movement.
Jim, how big a deal would this be if it was, now we have a county registry, but even a state registry? How big would that be in helping you and your staff do your job more effectively?
It would be massive, and not just for us, for the fellow agencies throughout the state. I don't know about you, but me, I come home and the dogs greet me before my wife or kids.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
You know,
I have 4 of them, and they meet me at the door before I can get to my fiance.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the unconditional love that a pet gives us. I mean, we can't speak enough about that, right? So that's why it's so important to be able to ensure that they're protected across the board, not just here in Marion County, but spreading this out, especially to other communities that may not be ready for this at the moment or feel that they're ready for it. But the reality is it's occurring there. So this is just a tool to help protect our pets, but it also at the same time, what people don't realize is protecting our community.
I think it's a great cause and one that I champion along with you. So thanks for what both of you are doing for the community, and thanks for coming in and shedding a little light on this today.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Since Molly's Law, a handful of Florida counties have enacted registries or databases of animal abusers. Though useful in their own rights, these varied ordinances can improve with uniformity in their scope and enforcement.
We're very blessed here in our community that we work closely with our state attorney's office, our sheriff's office, our local PDs. Everybody is involved. Some places, from what I understand, they don't have that kind of participation, and that could be a challenge in that community.
Everybody knows about Molly's Law, and so I reached out and got information from the other counties that had them, and just used that to how I wanted our registry to perform. And it's basically, it's a resource tool. You know, it has anybody that's been convicted of animal cruelty. You're in that database here in Volusia County. It goes back 10 years and it stays in there for 10 years going forward. When I first put our database together and we had it up and running, two different people went to the local shelters to get adopt out animals, and they were both in the database. So that's the first month it was up, 2 people. So 2 animals' lives were saved out of the hands of abusers because of the database. I have people tell me all the time, what can I do to help? Well, sometimes it's just as easy as writing a letter or sending an email or making phone calls or getting out there and rallying.
Cruelty can really evolve in a lot of different ways. It can be the tethering of a dog in a yard. It can be the failure to provide adequate food, water, and shelter for an animal. It could be leaving an animal in a car too long. There was a time where in the law an animal was only considered to be personal property. So the equivalent really of a table or a chair. You can't put a value on a life. So I believe that the law is really starting to make some strides in that regard.
You've seen that evolution, and just in my time in this business, I've seen the evolution significantly change from something that was not a concern for a lot of people to something that's on the forefront of a lot of people's minds.
It is a nonpartisan issue, and statistics show that someone who is likely to abuse an animal is likely to go on and abuse people or even worse. And so having this registry set up so that it could be cross-referenced from county to county would be a great step forward in raising awareness for animal abuse.
I would envision someday that we would have a nationwide registry so that organizations or others would know in advance who people are that might have a propensity towards violence towards animals and thus violence towards people. We understand that this correlation is very strong, and we want to prevent cruelty to people as well as cruelty to animals. And knowing that they have a connection and that we can predict that kind of behavior, I think is going to go a long way towards pushing this cause for having a nationwide animal abuser registry.
In Tallahassee, we certainly don't want to just reinvent the wheel and start writing a whole different law. We would say, hey, here's a model ordinance that was passed at a local government. How can we incorporate that at the state level? And so it's more of the logistics of working it out than it is the issue of, is it important that we do it?
This is something that, your local lawmakers should be happy to support and to get the folks that are needed to participate to create something that works for your community.
I feel like we have the infrastructure already in place to have a nationwide animal abuser registry. It feels like sometimes that there shouldn't be a barrier to making this happen. It almost feels like if we know who the animal abusers are, if we know who the domestic violence abusers are, and we know who the sexual abusers are, we already have that database. I think we should adopt a motto when it comes to animals of we can do better.
It takes perseverance and support to impact laws statewide.
Are you ready, girl? Let's do this.
The journey can be a long, uphill climb. Molly is facing challenges of her age and history. Her time as ambassador will soon end. At this recording, it has been over 7 years since Molly was so brutally attacked. The scars on her head have faded. The deeper scars of her heart have also softened. Molly never asked for the spotlight, but her story has become a beacon, a shining inspiration for many. To Molly and all who have shared and guided her journey, thank you.